What is going on, guys? This is going to be the first episode of story time on this channel. Hopefully this is something I do more often. On the stream, I give stories all of the time. Sometimes in the middle of games, sometimes at the beginning of streams, and they're kind of just lost in the stream. So I thought I would take clips from the stream, label them story time, put them up on this channel, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. The one other thing is this story is from a couple of months ago that I told, and you may notice that I have lost a lot of weight since then. This is really, like, comparing these two videos is the first time I have really seen that. So let me know what you think down in the comments, and if you enjoy the story times, hit that like button and we'll do more of them. But enjoy. Now, this next story is a much better story. Like, this is probably one of my favorite stories. I just got told it today, so I want to make sure I do it justice. I've never told this story, but it's fucking hilarious. Like, I don't want to hype it up too much, but this is one of the funniest things I've ever heard happen to anyone. It sounds fake, but I promise you this is 100% real. So, I don't even know where to start this. Let me think for a sec. So, in high school, I had a very close group of friends that were still very close. There was about 7 of us who pretty much every weekend hung out together. We went to parties together. When we had turned 19, we all drank together, partied together. Anyway, second year of university, 5 of them decided to rent a house together, because, like, one of the things as students is you can get really cheap housing if you live with a lot of people, and it's better if you live with a bunch of people who are all friends and can all live together. So 5 of them get this house. We call it Boys House because it spelled BOYZHAU 5, because that's how you spell that. And that's where we go every weekend. We party there every weekend. We have a good time. It's basically a frat house without being a frat house. That's the best way I can actually describe it. So Boys House is a perfect location. Boys live there. There's actually one girl that lives there. And like I said, so I can't use any names because this actually might go to court. So I can't use any names. But I've got my best friend from growing up. He lives there. And then I got 3 of my other friends from high school, one guy that lived there from university, the girl, and then last friend. Last friend I can tell you who he is. Remember Jay from the Cuban jail story? His real name's Jake, and he is the last guy in this story. Somehow he always ends up in these stories. Anyway, the reason why I can tell you him is because he decided to move out of Boys House. So Jake decides to move out of Boys House. All of a sudden, there's a room available in this 7-person house that all university students live in. It's important to note that everyone who lives in this house at this point is a university student. Keep that in mind. So, Jake moves out of the house. There's all of a sudden a room available. The landlord puts up room available. And keep in mind, since it's student housing, these rooms are super cheap. I'm talking like $400 a month cheap. Really fucking cheap. So, landlord puts up the house. There's a room available for rent. It's a shared kitchen. It's a shared house. Everything else in the house is shared, but you get your own room. About a week later, after the landlord puts this up, a middle-aged lady who kind of looked like a Mennonite shows up at the house to look at it. 2 of the guys who live there, 2 of my good friends who live there, see this lady show up at the house and go, you know what, that's kind of weird, but you know what, it must be someone's parent who goes to university. They want to check out the house for their son or daughter, and then maybe their son or daughter will move in. Turns out that wasn't the case. Turns out that this lady decided to look for a house in student housing as a 40-something-year-old woman to live with a bunch of 22 to 25-year-old guys. Which is weird. Is she a cougar? At this point, we don't know. Is she looking for some young guns to run her through the wall? We don't know. But we do know it's freaking weird that she's looking for a house in this location. So she moves in and really, like, nothing weird No, that's not true. Weird shit happened. Like, for example, she carried around a shopping cart with her like she was homeless. Like, she drove it and parked it on the grass, left it there, and then when she left in the morning, she would grab her shopping cart and walk away with it again. Weird, I know, odd, but whatever. She had her shopping cart. Some other weird things that happened is right after she announced that she was renting the room. This was actually the 23rd, I know, because that's our friend's Christmas party that we have at that house. So she just announced that she was moving into the house. We're all sitting there and drinking some eggnog, watching Christmas Vacation, and guy pulls into the driveway, goes around back, like gets out of his car, goes around the back, and like disappears back there, and we're all sitting here like, what the hell's going? Is this guy gonna kill us? This guy might kill us. And then he ends up coming back and getting in his car and leaving. So time goes on, and like, this is about 2 months later. This happened last week. They kind of like tried to talk to her, like she got some mail. They go knock on her door. They know she's in there, by the way. They knock on her door. She says nothing. She like, they'll hear her in there. They'll knock on the door and she'll stop moving and stop breathing. Like she'll just like hide in there, which is weird. And that's also like a sign that like she was beaten in a relationship. I don't know that. That's just me throwing that in there. It's just like, that's one of the signs, like, as a paramedic that they tell you to look for when you go to a house. If, like, the woman's, like, really quiet and the man's talking to you. Anyway, that's beside the point. So she's not talking to any of them. But then shit starts to get even more weird. So the other girl that lives in the basement of that house comes upstairs and goes, hey, guys, have you been using the kitchen downstairs? And, like, not mad or anything. She's just like, have you been using the kitchen downstairs? And they go, no, why? She's been like, someone's turning on the stove down there to 500, which if you cook anything, you don't really cook at 500. Like, nobody cooks, bakes, does anything at 500 on an oven. So she's like, someone's been going down there, turning on the oven to 500 and just leaving it on. They're like, yeah, that's not any of us. It must be a new girl, 40-year-old cougar down in the basement. And they're like, okay, weird. And then the next day, they're all sitting in the living room watching TV, watching a movie, some Avengers, you know. And they keep their thermostat at 69 Fahrenheit because it's boys' house and everything has to be 69, right? So they keep their thermostat at 69 Fahrenheit. The 40-year-old cougar runs up the stairs in the middle of the day, goes over to the thermostat, presses the button up to 78 degrees Fahrenheit, goes downstairs, turns on the stove to 500 degrees Celsius, and goes back in her room, slams her door. They're like, what the fuck just happened? What? Where? First of all, she doesn't come out of her room. Second of all, what? Why? Like, I'm sure it might be cold in here. 69's a little chilly. But, like, you don't do that. So at this point, they're, like, weirded out. And this keeps happening. So my buddy, my best friend growing up, he also lives in the basement. He's in the very basement right beside the kitchen. That's where his bedroom is in the house. And he ends up, the one day he was off work, he had to turn the stove off of 500 degrees Fahrenheit 12 times in a day. 12 times in a day. That's a lot. That's a lot. Like, she's clearly leaving her room, the cougar, leaving her room, turning on the stove to 500 Fahrenheit, leaving back to her room, and, like, over and over and over again throughout the day. But you don't do that. Like, that's a fire hazard, right? Like, sure, you can turn up the thermostat, that's one thing. But turning on the stove to heat up the house is dangerous. You can start a fire that way. So they end up messaging the landlord. This is where things get really fucking squirrely. They end up messaging the landlord, and the landlord goes, honestly... So the landlord tells them that there was some reason that he can't tell them that he had to rent out the house to this lady. Like, legally, he had to rent it to her. I don't know enough about, like, residential law as to why that would be, but that's what he told them. So something weird's going on there. They still don't know the answer to that. But he tells them to get this sorted out, he can't do anything. So they actually have to call the police because they're worried about their lives, right? Like, they're worried that this chick is going to burn down the house. So they call the cops, the non-emergency line, just tell them what's going on. They're like, we'll send out a cop today. I'm not sure what time. It's going to be whenever someone's not busy, and they'll see what they can do. So this is the unbelievable part. So the cop shows up about halfway through the day. We'll call it 2 p.m. And the Cougar's there. The Cougar is in her room, and they explain the whole situation. They explain how whenever they knock on the door to talk to her, she doesn't answer, she doesn't move, she just hides in there. They explain how she's been leaving her room, turning up the thermostat, turning on the stove full blast, 500 degrees. They explain the whole thing. Everything I just told you, they explain it. The cop goes, okay, I'll go and talk to her. So the cop knocks on the door. Bang, bang, bang. She does the thing where she just... Simon says freeze. And she doesn't move, she doesn't breathe. And the cop bangs, bang, bang, bang again, goes, this is the police, open up. So of course, now she goes, opens up the door and goes, oh, hello, officer, I didn't hear you. Like, what the fuck do you mean you didn't hear me? You stopped moving when I knocked on the door. So already the cop is like, okay, what the fuck is going on with the chick? So the cop just straight up asks, have you been coming out and leaving the stove on 500 degrees? And she goes, oh, yes, like, I was planning on doing some baking, but everyone in the house kept getting in the kitchen, and I couldn't do it. And the cop, like, ends up talking about something else. Oh, why don't you talk to the guys in the house? Why don't you do this? And then she just goes, he goes, so why have you been leaving the stove on 500? Like, he asks again. And she just goes, I don't have to talk to you without my lawyer being here. You can leave now. Goodbye. And slams the door on the cop's face. And the cop goes, well... she didn't break any laws, so I can't arrest her, but, like, there's something going on here. Like, there's something weird going on here. So, so the cop leaves. He writes up a police report, he leaves, just in case, like, any legal proceedings happen. But here's the kicker. Since the cop came out, talked to her, and she didn't change anything, now... the landlord can give her an eviction notice. So the way eviction notices work from here, you have to have a reason for an eviction notice. So the landlord writes up an eviction notice, gives it to her, and explains you have 7 days a week to correct your behavior, or you're forced to move out. That's how that works. So if she stops being crazy, if she stops turning on the stove to 500, she's good. She can live there. Right? She is solid. Life is going to be good. So, the next day, after getting the eviction notice, my friends have to go to work. And they check the stove. The stove is off. They check the thermostat. The thermostat is still at 69. They're like, okay, it worked. She's done being crazy. They go to put on their shoes. And both of their shoes are filled with shave cream. The lady came up from downstairs, was mad about the eviction notice, so sprayed their shoes full of shaving cream. So they both put their shoes on and go, well, fuck. So this, unfortunately, this is where the story ends. I don't know what happens after this. This is up to present day. So the lady went from trying to burn the house down to pranking her roommates because she got an eviction notice. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm guessing she gets evicted after doing that. I will keep you guys updated on this story. I think, so like, our guess is that the reason why he had to take her in was for mental health reasons, right? Like, if she says, I have a mental disability, you're renting this room, you can't discriminate against me, boom, they have to rent it out. The other option was, what we originally thought, is that this dude, this chick, the Cougar, came from an abusive relationship, because when that guy showed up at the house on the 23rd of December, and like, it looked like he was going around the back to look for her, and when she wasn't there, he left. Like, it was really sketchy. The whole thing's been sketchy. By the way, the cougar is not attractive whatsoever. She's just a cougar because a 40-something-year-old decided to live with a bunch of 20-year-olds. But a weird series of events. I'll keep you updated as to what happens with her.